right with that. All right, we are now recording. So first, I would like to introduce myself. I am Shannon Tyler, a senior this year at Loveland High School and a member of Loveland's Youth Advisory Commission, as well as the moderator for tonight. I have with me Eloise Nelson, a member of the Youth Advisory Commission, who will be our time tracker. Thank you all for coming to the Youth Political Engagement virtual town hall. If you are here as a member of the youth in Loveland, thank you for getting engaged in your community and tuning in tonight. If you are an adult, thank you for being here and engaging with the youth. We really do appreciate it. I would also like to thank the Political Education Subcommittee of the Youth Advisory Commission for working hard the past couple of months and putting this together. I would also like to thank Beth Gumestad, the Youth Advisory Commission staff liaison, for all her hard work helping putting this together and working out the logistics of this town hall. Tonight, we are here to discuss the issues that the youth are interested in, as well as hear our local elected officials and others involved in politics and answer those questions and speak on those issues. The purpose of tonight is to bridge the gap between those who have been involved in politics for some time and the youth who are just getting started with their political engagement. We will get into panelist introductions in a little bit, but first I will outline how this town hall will run and a few housekeeping rules. The town hall will be 90 minutes. We will start with panelist introductions, and which will be 10 minutes with 1 minute for each panelist. We will then get into the questions submitted by youth in the community, which are sectioned off into groups by topic. Each section will have an allocated amount of time, starting with general questions about voting, the election, and getting involved. This section will be 25 minutes. Then we will go into local issues, which will be 15 minutes, then issues dealing with COVID, which will be 10 minutes, and ending with the topic of climate change and questions surrounding that, which will be another 10 minutes. I will remind you at the beginning of each section how many minutes we have. We will end with last remarks from the panelists, and each panelist will be given another minute to let the youth know any last thoughts. Now we have some housekeeping rules. First, we ask that all audience members stay muted throughout the whole town hall. So basic rules for the panelists. Please speak clearly, loudly, and concisely. Please remain muted unless speaking. And if you choose to answer a question, you may unmute and start. If multiple people unmute, we will go with whoever unmuted first. And if there is a discrepancy, I will go ahead and choose. Due to time, panelists may choose up to 5 questions to speak on. Once you unmute, you will have 2 minutes to speak on the question. Each question will be given roughly 5 minutes to discuss. However, I will moderate how much time is given to each question, as some questions may require more time to discuss. The questions are outlined in the agenda, and Eloise put the link to the agenda in the chat if you do not have the agenda. If you, let's hear. So if you would like to go through the agenda to plan which questions you would like to answer, Eloise will keep time and tell you through the chat box when you have 10 seconds left of your 2 minutes. She will also come off of mute and cut you off at the 2-minute mark. The moderator, myself, and Eloise, our time tracker, reserve the right to mute or remove anyone who chooses to behave inappropriately. That is all for our housekeeping rules. Thank you again for coming. We will now start with panelist introductions. Panelists, you will each get 1 minute to introduce yourself, your position, and why you wanted to participate tonight. We will go in the order that is stated on the agenda. So Councilman Dave Clark, you are first.
Okay, so just a brief introduction, Shannon, is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Dave Clark. I'm on the Loveland City Council. Have been there since about 2004. I was off for about 3 years during a time and then got back on. So I've been living in Loveland since 1963. So kind of grew up here, went to school, went to Loveland High School, and raised my family here. Currently, I'm the owner and executive producer for the Candlelight Dinner Playhouse, and trying to struggle through the environment we're living in right now. I'm also the liaison to the Youth Advisory Commission from the City Council, and I've worked with them for the last few years. And I will simply say that we have a prime crop of youth in this city. And most of them, a lot of them are sitting on this committee here with us today. So it's been a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to work with these youth and learn from them. And hopefully I've been able to help them a little bit as they learn about their city that they live in, this wonderful city of Loveland. So that's all for me, Shannon. Thank you.
All right, now we have Kathy Wright.
Shannon, I don't see Kathy on.
I don't either. We will go on to John Fogel.
I don't see John on either.
Councillor Fogel is, excuse me for interrupting, but Councillor Fogel called me. He's on the way back from doing work today. He was out of the area, but he should be on any minute. He was getting very close to his neighborhood. So I think by the time we're done with introductions, he should be with us.
All right, we will go on to CSU Professor Matthew Hitt.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Hitt from CSU's Department of Political Science. I want to thank the Youth Advisory Commission for inviting me to this event tonight. I'm the odd duck here because unlike all these great public servants, no one voted for me. But I'm really excited to be here. I teach and do research in American politics, so certainly this season is of great interest to me intellectually and professionally. I certainly want to be a voice here tonight for talking about, from an academic perspective, an educator's perspective, on some of the things we know about politics and political participation. I'm very passionate about encouraging all my students, all young people, to engage with the political process. I'll probably talk more about this potentially on some of those questions. But just the upshot, I guess, while I've got everyone's attention here at the beginning, is that politics is going to be practiced. That's the feature of our life in this wonderful country. And if you choose not to practice it, someone will gladly practice it for you. And you probably don't agree with them all the time. So with that, I turn over to the next introduction.
Thank you. And Mayor Jackie Marsh. You are on mute.
You're muted, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Jackie Marsh, Loveland Mayor. I'm serving my second term as mayor. City councilors serve for 4 years, mayors serve for 2. So I'm 3 years into being mayor at this point. Let's see, grandmother of a 16-year-old granddaughter who goes to school in Fort Collins. A jewelry designer, have been a small business owner in downtown Loveland, but have recently given up the brick and mortar store. Yeah, that's about me. Thanks.
Thank you. And City Council Member Andrea Sampson, if you are here, I don't know if I saw her. All right. Doesn't look like she's here. All right. And City Council Member Dawn Overcash.
I just saw Andrea sign on, so let's go ahead and let Andrea go. I see her there laughing, so.
All right. Andrea Sampson.
I'm here.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. So hi, everyone. Andrea Sampson. I am the newest council member because I was sworn in December, unlike Council Malloy, sworn in November. I won my race by 3 votes, so it was a trial by fire election. I'm a mom to 2. You can hear my little one probably in the background. We spent a good part of the afternoon at Children's Hospital today, so they're tired from being in the car. So I'm sorry for being late, but I am a mom. I'm 34. I have, been really passionate about making changes in our community since I moved back to Loveland 8 years ago. And I just am so grateful that you guys are hosting this tonight. Thank you. It's really exciting to see youth getting involved. And I'm really, anything that we can do to help, that's really inspiring. You're inheriting all of this. So this is a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, Councillor Fogel just came on.
Oh, perfect. Councillor Fogel, if you would like to do your introduction.
soon as I can find the mute button here. From an introduction standpoint, I'm John Fogel. I've lived in the community for now coming on 52 years. I think Dave Clark's got me beat by a few years, but not very many. I've been a businessman in several different businesses in this community. I've been an automobile dealer. I run my own IT consulting firm. And I've done a lot of different businesses in this community. As far as council, I'm on my third term as a city councilor. And at the end of that, it'll be 12 years. And we'll see how it goes at that point. I'm not sure what else you wanted us to say, but my wife and I, through our second marriage, enjoy 7 kids between us. They're all grown up and gone, except for one staying home while she finishes up her master's degree. And other than that, definitely all about Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now Councilmember Overcash.
Thank you, Shannon. Yes, my name's Don Overcash, and I've been in Loveland since 2006. I'm a pharmacist by education. I have some other degrees, but my pharmaceutical or degree in pharmacy is the one that served me for a 40-year career working in the healthcare sector. I've run, managed as CEO, president, 4 different companies within the pharmaceutical sector. And then at the after I hit 3 million miles on United Airlines, I said enough flying and I moved to Loveland. And my wife is also a pharmacist. She has her doctorate and she is volunteering, Angela, to help us count ballots over the next few days. So she'll be seeing you. She loves to do that. So we're both involved in the community currently. And for the last 11 years now, I've been a principal in a business called Sandler Training here in Loveland. And I work with businesses from small businesses to Fortune 500 businesses in providing management training, organizational training, as well as sales training. And I just love serving businesses in particular. And that's why I got involved with City Council. I'm on my second term of City Council, and I look forward to serving for at least another 3 years.
Thank you. All right, now Councilor Rob Malloy.
Thanks, Shannon. So Rob Malloy here. I've lived in Loveland since 1992. Started and raised a family here, 3 kids. My daughter was actually chair of the Youth Advisory Commission 2010, 2011. I think it's important to be active within the city, even at your age is definitely the ins and out of city operates. I spent 20 years building and maintaining golf courses in the area. And then I went back to school when I was 38, got a degree in landscape architecture. I'm now a landscape architect, land planner, have my own business, work with flood developments across the state. So with that, I got involved with the Planning Commission. I spent 13 years on the Planning Commission. It kind of gave me the ins and outs of how it works in chambers. Of course, we weren't political. You know, we worked with land use applications and such. So I learned a lot of processes, which goes with what I do in my own business. And then a year ago, I was elected to City Council. So it was my first year.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and now Councilor Steve Olson.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I grew up in Minnesota. I joined the Navy. Vietnam War was going on. Ended up spending a year in Vietnam with the Marine Corps, and then ended up with 29 years of service to the United States as a naval officer. I saw the mountains for the first time when I left Minnesota going to San Diego to school and just fell in love with the mountains. And so 23 years ago this month, I moved to Loveland, Colorado. And in the military, you cannot participate in publicly in politics. So my wife and I are both retired military. We decided we wanted to get involved in the community. I got on the Planning Commission, was on that for about 6 years within 3 months of my arrival. My wife was on the Board of Health and still is on the Board of Health, been on there for 16 years. So we both of us have tried to serve the community. I really appreciate y'all holding this event. It's pretty amazing that you have this kind of an interest. And so I applaud you for that. I want you to know that I take your questions seriously and appreciate developing them. And if my answers happen to conflict with yours, I hope you'll have some tolerance. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, County Clerk Angela Myers.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Shannon. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Aiden, for the invitation that I received. I am honored to always have an opportunity to speak about the realities of voting and administering that process. I have been your county clerk for 7 years. I was appointed in 2013 May, and I was then elected in 2014 and again in 2018. I am in the middle of my second term. Been in the office for 17 years. So I have a depth of knowledge of the administrative processes that are conducted by the Clerk and Recorder's office. This is not a policy-making office. This is an administrative office. So my office focuses on, of course, elections administration, vehicle titling and licensing. Every vehicle in Larimer County got to deal with my office at least once a year. Every owner must, in order to get those tags renewed, and certainly when they buy and sell their vehicles and that kind of thing. As well, I am responsible for the public record. A little bit of information for you, or a tidbit of information about the recording department. The reason the recording department is here is to keep the public record. It was actually needed and is the reason why county government was formed to begin with, because of the need to record who owned what property back when. And we actually had a recording office before we had a county. So it's quite a little bit of trivia there for you. And the recording department, primarily we record property records for property ownership and change of ownership and that kind of thing. But you can put anything you'd like into the public record. It will be there for all of time, into perpetuity. It's a little known thing that we do. Unless you need it, you don't know you need it. And it's one of my busiest departments, and I call them my silent overachievers. We will hire for this election 675 election judges to conduct the election. I have a staff of 14 in the elections department. So elections are conducted.
Ms. Myers, your time is up. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry. Take care.
You're all good. Thank you so much. We are going to start into the questions submitted from youth in the community, starting with our general questions about the election, voting, and getting involved. A reminder, this section is 25 minutes. Each question will have roughly 5 minutes. And again, panelists, you can choose up to 5 questions to answer throughout the entire town hall. The agenda has all of the questions, so we will get started. With the first question under general questions. Pretty easy question. Why should people vote? Yes, Dave Clark.
Thank you, Shannon. So voting is a privilege and a responsibility. I was in Boy Scouts for many years, both as a scout and as a scout leader. And that's something we teach a lot there, citizenship and the responsibilities there. So it's something that's very passionate for me. I've tried to be involved in our community here on many different things, but we vote because the elected officials are the ones that make policies that affect our lives, and we should all get involved. Sometimes we think one vote doesn't count. I think Councillor Sampson could tell you how important those votes are. As she said, she won her seat by 3 votes. And a little story on me, the first time I was voted in the city council, I won by 13 votes. So it was a good thing my family voted that year. But those votes count, and it's very important, and it's a responsibility and a privilege we have. So the youth, you guys at your age, I'm glad you're getting involved. Look forward to your first election that you'll be able to vote in, and do it with honor. So those are my comments. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. Yes, Don Overcash.
Yes, thank you. I too was a Boy Scout, and I was an Eagle Scout. And when I was working on my merit badge for government, I remember my first encounter with an attorney. Unfortunately, in my life, it wasn't my only encounter, but it was my first encounter, and he walked me through the importance of government. So I believe I was 12 years old at the time, and it had a lasting impression on me. And the question is, why should people vote? And, you know, frankly, I'm not sure everybody should vote. Now, that's because we need to be responsible citizens. And if we should vote to fulfill our responsibility, but we need to be informed citizens. And we need to do a little more work in voting than paying attention to TV ads or flashy mailers, things of this nature. And that really ties into your question that you have later about youth voting or being informed and why getting involved. Learning is a lifelong process, and issues don't happen in 1 week. You can resolve the issue. There's a history to issues, and it takes time to understand those issues. And it takes time in the current time period, we're looking at those issues, but also over a period of time, because issues tend to change as information becomes available. So I really believe that voting is a responsibility, but we need to be well-informed voters and vote by being diligent and seeking the right information, and not just voting on an opinion, but make sure your opinions are backed up by sound facts. Then it's appropriate to form an opinion and cast your vote. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Marsh.
I'll be brief. You know, you hear all the time that your vote is your voice. And I would add to that, it is your opportunity to affect change. If there's something that you're not happy with, something that you think could be improved. And it's also your opportunity with things the way they are, and somebody else might be pushing something that would change. Your vote is your opportunity. So you need to, you know, pay attention to the candidates that are running, and do they overall represent how you feel on the issues you care about, and also on the issues, you know, vote your conscience.
Thank you. Any last remarks from any panelists? Yes, Professor Hitt.
Yeah, so I would certainly agree with everything that our elected officials have said here. One thing I like to remind my students of that I think puts this in good relief for some of them: people are going to vote. People are going to use their voice. People are going to make themselves heard and trying to affect change in a way that they think is best. And I like to tell my students, look, if you were taking a 5-day road trip from Loveland to New York City, and for some reason your grandmother's second cousin once removed Bernice was in the car with you, would you let her pick the playlist the entire way? Would you be cool with that? And if you wouldn't, if you don't like that idea that someone else gets to impose their values on how your experience goes for something as simple as a little car trip, how your community is actually run and the kind of public policies we enact are so much more important and impactful for you. I was actually reminded when Councilor Overcash was talking rightly about the importance of being an informed voter, right, to cast that ballot with some knowledge behind it. One of my favorite places in the country is the Library of Congress in Washington. And over the door is inscribed this wonderful quote from James Madison, that knowledge will forever govern ignorance. And so a people like us in this wonderful country who mean to be our own governors must arm ourselves with the power that knowledge brings. And so very much endorse that idea that, you know, we've got to do the work ourselves before casting our ballots if we want to feel the most efficacious and the best about the vote we end up casting.
Thank you. We will go on to the next question. How do you encourage people to get involved and vote? Yeah, Dave.
Got to unmute. How to let them know the consequences. I think Professor Hitt just kind of touched on that a little bit. If you're not involved, other people are going to make decisions for you. Now, we live in a democratic society, which is great because we all have a voice, but when the voice of the people, or whenever, you know, those things happen, we need to kind of, you know, as a society, we follow that. But if we are wanting to do something, obviously we need to get involved. And like Councilor Overcash said, so many people vote without really knowing what they're voting for. In our city, for example, we're having election time. Many of my friends know that that I'm on the city council and am involved. And I don't know how many calls I've had of people saying, well, who do I vote for? And how do I vote for this? And so on. So I have to take them time and educate them a little bit. So get people involved, tell them what it's about, help them understand the consequences of what the issues are, and try and help them understand that they are important and they need to be, that their vote does count. And they ought to try and work on that and just be more involved in where they live. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor.
Yeah, certainly agree with what Councillor Clark said. So actually, as a political scientist, this is a fun question, because one of the things we've had really good data on for decades and decades as political scientists is whether or not people vote. And so what helps people turn out to vote, what encourages political participation is probably the best studied question in modern political science. We've been doing this since the 1940s. And I would point out to everyone here that if you're interested in encouraging other people to vote, encouraging people to get involved, there's a couple things that really a pretty high quality research shows tends to work. So one thing that works really well is encouraging folks to have a plan to vote, right? Not just, hey, are you going to vote? Yeah, I'm going to vote. Well, you know, if you're talking to someone about, well, what's your plan? Are you going to go to a drop box? Are you going to go to a voter service center? Did you mail it in already? All those sorts of things, right? Being really specific, because when people have a plan, they know when they're going to vote, how they're going to vote. They can anticipate some problems. Well, I'd like to go to the voter service center, but I work during those hours, so I better go to the drop box instead. Simple stuff like that. And that relates to another part of this, which is interpersonal connections can also make a big difference, right? If a friend, a family member, if you know they're voting, you're talking about voting with them, that tends to be a lot more impactful than, say, a text or a phone call from a stranger. So if you're very passionate, if you're here at a town hall like this, you might be very engaged in politics and very passionate about what happens in your community, and you're worried that some of your friends might not share those, share that same level of engagement. It doesn't hurt to send a text and say, hey, I'm planning on voting. Here's how I'm planning on voting. As Councillor Clark said, mentioning, you know, why it's important is good. But ultimately, what it comes down to is encouraging folks within your network to make that plan and go out and cast their ballot.
Thank you. Yes, Angela Myers.
Professor Hitt makes a great comments about making a plan to vote. I've got in my hands the blue book for this election. Look how thick that is. If you don't make a plan to really decide what you're going to vote on, you're going to find yourself really at a loss when you get that long ballot out, especially in an election like the one we have right now. A couple things to remember about that, though. You don't have to vote on every single question. This is the ballot from this election that we're going through right now. It's a long one, and this isn't everything to be on. So please, you know, make your plan. And remember, if you don't want to vote on everything, don't. If you're not, I mean, there are some things I don't always vote on. For instance, typically school board things, because I don't have children in the school system. And so I figure I want to leave that to the parents who do, right? And so you don't have to vote on things you're not comfortable with your knowing what your decision would be on them.
Thank you for your input on that question. I think we will move on to the third question. Why should youth get involved in politics at this age? If they should. Yes, Angela Myers.
Well, you know, this may not be the most popular response, but I'm not so certain that they should. You know, I think it's great to understand it, and I think what you're doing is a wonderful thing here. I think there is you're in the point of educating yourself about the process. You know, there's been a lot of noise out there about the potential for 17-year-olds voting and bringing that voting age down. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that, because politics is a very emotional game. It can be very ugly, and it can be very nasty. And when young people are in some of the most challenging times in their lives, I look back on my high school years, and I know those were some of my most anxious moments. Teen suicide is a very real thing right now, and I think peer pressure can really push people over the edge, cause them to focus on things that they don't have to yet focus on. Let's grow up first a little bit and then put that kind of pressure on young people. I think the age 18 is great, but I do have real concern about the health and safety of younger folks who might be pressured by those who have dominion over them, whether that be in their classroom, in their home, and other places. So I like the voting age where it is, but I do think that what you're doing right now gets you ready to be ready when you get to be 18. So kudos to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Marsh, you are unmuted. Did you want to add?
Well, I would just, a lot of the things we vote on do affect our youth. And so hearing that voice, having representation, at various ages and stages in life, I think is important. Take vaping, for example. That's certainly a topic that is prime concern, obviously, to everybody, but in particular to the youth that are targeted by the tobacco companies. So I would think having your voice and your vote count and things like that. And as Angela said, you don't have to vote on things that you don't feel you're knowledgeable about. But I would say that's true of anybody. It just like Councillor Clark, I have people contact me who I should vote for. And one of the most common areas of confusion are the judges. People don't typically hear about the judges, and so they don't feel they know enough to vote for the judges, and it takes a little extra effort to educate. But I think our youth, just as our seniors, are capable of educating themselves on the things they care about. So thank you.
Thank you. I believe Andrea Sampson wanted to say something. I apologize, Andrea, you are not on my screen. Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. I raised my hand in the chat. Is that a good thing to do, or are you not looking at that list?
I
or
can
in the
definitely
participation? Okay, it doesn't, whatever's easiest for you. So the question was about getting involved in politics at this age, like high school age is what you're thinking, right? So first of all, I don't think politics has to mean politician. Politics can mean exactly what you're doing right now. It can mean town halls. It can mean being an intern. Sorry, you're killing my minute here, girl. And it can mean, studying. It can mean, volunteer. Oh, good Lord, it's been a long day. It can mean volunteering. There's a whole host of things that you can do to be involved in politics. And not only do I think that it's good or that why should you? I think you should. Everyone should. Just like Mayor Marsh said, it's your future. So I'm so sorry. The other thing I was going to say, if I have 2 more minutes or another second, is that, one of the things that when you're young and you run for office, which I encourage you all to consider at some point serving in the way that you're most comfortable. And if that's running for office, I definitely think that you should pursue it. But one of the things that's talked about is your lack of experience when you're young. So start gaining that experience now by getting involved in your school, in local parties, even just in the League of Women Voters, anything that you can do to garner that experience. So when you decide to show up wherever you're going, you'll have that, and you won't be discredited then. So thank you.
Thank you. And then Professor Hitt, did you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So I actually like to think of political engagement by young people as a math problem, right? So the decisions that your government is making now will have long-term and lasting consequences, right? That's why we have elections. That's why people do get so emotional and passionate about that. Elections have consequences at every level of government. And if you're a young person, the odds are you're going to be living with those consequences for, a lot longer than many of the people who might actually be making those decisions, right? And so to let the game pass you by and not do the work as we've been talking about, to educate yourself, to do the very things you're doing tonight by participating in this kind of town hall, learn about the issues, learn about American government, learn about the sorts of issues that are unique to the Loveland area that come into play in local politics, so that when the time comes, when your 18th birthday arrives and you're ready to start casting your vote, you can feel good about that you're ready to engage in our democracy every bit as much as everyone else who's voting.
All right, thank you. Oh yes, Rob Malloy.
Yeah, just to add on to what Professor Matt said, I feel it's necessary at a young age because it carries you into your up to your senior years. When you get involved early, you have a better understanding of the politics, and you generally stick with it through the rest of your life. Politics is kind of its own animal, basically, is the way I see it. People who start late have a harder time understanding what the policies are, who's ever running for government, what they really stand for, and their direction. But I believe it's very important as a youth that just basically that when you get started early, you usually continue the rest of your life following politics the way it should be followed.
Thank you. All right. Quick update. We think that we're doing good on time, so we're going ahead and throwing out the 5-question limit out the window. You all have been doing very good on time and staying under 2 minutes. So on to the next question. How do you try to reach the youth in your community? Yes, Dave.
I go to Youth Advisory Commission. That's all. No, actually, I do talk to a lot of my youth friends at church and some other areas that I work with, and encourage them to get involved in the city. You know, as I said before, I grew up in Loveland, so I really, I've been in other places, but this is my town, and I just love to see it grow, and I just know that the youth are the ones that are going to carry that on. So I like to talk with them and help them understand that they are there. And like Professor Hitt said, they're the ones that are going to make decisions that are going to be long lasting for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrea, your hand was up.
Thank you. So how do I reach the youth in our community, right? So that's like the most perplexing question for adults. And I find myself like at 34, even being perplexed by this, like, what is it, TikTok now, or do we do Snap, or is that like way out, or like, how do we even social media engage, right? Like no one's on Facebook. But you know what I really have found is that probably the best way to talk about politics with young people is talking about the things that matter to them, right? So reaching out in wherever they're engaged, like, Councilor Clark said, through his church, getting involved in even just like community kitchen, people involved, wherever people are, the food bank, volunteering. It seems like the young people of Loveland in particular are out volunteering, giving their time. And I think it's such an opportunity for us to reach out, right? But for me personally, I've been able to get involved in because I'm part of the Democratic Party, so we have Young Dems, right? And that's an organization that's actually national, but it's also statewide or, just countywide, citywide even. And that's a really cool way for and I believe that there's probably one for the Republican Party as well. If you're a politically minded young person, that's a great way for you to meet older adults and even, people who are involved in politics in your community, even elected officials. So that's a really cool way to reach out. But I think the hardest part for us as electeds and as adults even is connecting with youth when we don't have youth that age. And so, I think the youth advisory, like you're just such a great bridge for us. And I appreciate this work that you're doing. And when you come, especially before us and have conversation with us to tell us what's going on at the high school level, because, that's something that kind of seems to evade us a little bit, but I know it's something that's on my mind. And I believe actually most of council's mind, which is why you guys are so effective when you come before us.
Thank you. Mayor Marsh, you are unmuted. Would you like to add?
Yeah, I'll give a plug for Andrea's monthly town halls. They're open to everyone. So the final Saturday morning of the month, 9:30 to 11 a.m. So there's one this coming Saturday. Also, Delaney and Jody Shattuck McNally's intergenerational conversations have been wonderful, a wonderful way to talk about topics, both with seniors and youth. I find that being elected, we get invited to a lot of things. So Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, You know, the youth march from Bill Reed to Town Hall. We get invited to, COVID is kind of messing that up this year. But in general, we do get invited to a lot of things and really appreciate those invitations, all levels, kindergartners on up. It's great.
That's good to hear. John Fogel, did you have your hand up?
I think one of the things that I wanted to expound on what Dave was saying is the importance of our church communities in our community as a whole. For many years, I directed youth groups at Mountain View, and it just seems like people don't get involved in that as much as they used to. I mean, we used to have youth group meetings of 50 to 75 people at a time, young people. And I'm not hearing that goes on in all the churches like it used to today. And that's kind of unfortunate. For 23 years of my life, running youth groups at Mountain View was a very important part of what I did. And getting involved with the young people really pays big dividends, not just to the young people, but to adults that do it. I know Dave's done it. I think Don's done it. I like I said, I directed that for 23 years. And one of the things that I'd really give you an inclination to do would be travel with work projects around the country. You know, once we can travel again and we don't have to worry about sneezing on each other, traveling around the country with work projects for different camps or different organizations. There's lots of different organizations. And I know that several of the churches around Loveland have programs where the youth travel. You know, they'll take a couple, 3 busloads of kids and they'll go down to a flood area and clean up the mess. So they'll go to some place that needs new roofs and they'll do it. I've enjoyed that. I think the kids that I took on those trips enjoyed it immensely, and we took literally hundreds. So that's what I do to reach out to young people in the community. I haven't been doing it for a few years now. Suddenly this city council thing kind of takes a lot of time, especially the way that I do it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And lastly, we'll take a couple minutes to answer the last question. With the election happening, how do you try to find common ground with people you disagree with? Councillor Overcash?
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. I don't think it's just with the election happening. I think it's important all the time, even as we govern as city councilors. Just a few points that I have found helpful, whether it's regarding politics or even just conducting business and working with management teams. I've always found it best to start with the end in mind. Come to an agreement on an issue and agree that we need to find a solution and agree that we're going to work together towards that solution. And that what we might think is the path might not be the correct path or the absolute only path, but work collectively to walk down that path so you both arrive at a solution that can be implemented. And the way to do that, I believe, is first to listen to understand. Too many of us listen, and we're listening so we can form our next statement and play gotcha, or argue, or make our point, or whatever it might be. But listen to really understand what's going on, where that person's coming from. And I also encourage people to focus on facts. Facts and data. Focus on facts, but more importantly, come to an agreement on what the relevant facts are. There's a lot of data out there, and it's not necessarily relevant to the issue, or is it a priority to the issue? And people will often latch on to the numbers they like or the facts that they like, rather than really identifying what are the critical factors that need to be considered. Don't get emotional. Stay adult, stay logical, stay rational. And you do that by staying focused on the facts. And when we get emotional, here's what happens. And both sides or all sides, how many sides we got to an issue, there's no place for name calling. There's no place for the expressions that we've heard in the media. You know, I hear, from the right, I hear people being called libtards. And from the left, I hear people calling people deplorables, or recently heard the word chumps being used, things of that nature. That does absolutely nothing. That is a totally unproductive discussion once you get to that point. Remember to stay focused on the outcome, and the overall, I think, criteria to have those kind of discussions is value the person, value the relationship that you're developing or destroying through your conversation. If you value others and value the person, winning isn't necessary. Having a productive conversation is, because the relationship is much more important. It's going to outlast any data, any facts, any situation we might be faced with. Thank you.
All right, Dave Clark.
Oh, go to Angela first. She raised her hand.
All right, Angela Myers.
Oh, thank you, Dave. You know, I just think it's so important when you are a government official to treat everybody with the respect that they deserve, no matter their political persuasion or whether they agree or disagree with you. In my job, it's much easier to do that because I'm not setting policy. And so the things that I do for every citizen are administrative. But it's so important that citizens, no matter their political views, know that the government actually works for them and that the government is their place. You know, they should never feel uncomfortable about making contact with anyone at any government level, but certainly locally, we live in your neighborhoods and we go to your grocery stores, and that should not be a faraway person that you don't know how to get in touch with, or you're uncertain about bothering in some way. I mean, we work for you. You know, that is something that always stymies me a little bit when folks are uncomfortable doing that. So I would encourage all of you, get in that habit. If the folks who are leading you or who are elected by you to run the government processes or the government itself are if they don't hear anything noise besides the one in their head, they're probably not going to get it right. They do need to hear from you. And the only thing I will always tell you, be respectful, be respectful, be respectful, even if you completely disagree with what they've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dave Clark.
Thank you. So as we've talked in our YAC meetings, you remember what I always say about the discussion? There's always two sides or more, right? There always is. So you can't make a decision if you don't know what the other sides are talking about. And you usually can't make a very good decision at all if you can't figure that out. So I have learned so much over the years by listening to people that don't agree with me. And quite frankly, I've learned a lot from my kids because they're the ones that usually didn't agree with me, but I've learned a lot from them. And, you know, look at Beth and I politically, we've already talked about that. You know, we're kind of on different sides of the thing, but man, we have a good time together. And, you know, we're working with you guys and so on. So there's ways to do that. Don't let your beliefs or your political background destroy those relationships like other people have said. So it's been really good to me to work with you guys with all of your different opinions and understanding, because it helps me learn. And you guys can learn too by listening to both sides, all the sides. Thanks, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you. Steve Olson, you are unmuted.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I think following up on what Councilor Overcash said, I think it's important to seek first to understand and then seek to be understood. And also, I think it's a matter of trust. If there's a willingness to trust the other person, you're much more likely to try to have a discussion of things. And that's one thing that frustrates me about council is we really don't have an opportunity to discuss issues. We can ask questions, but to really have a dialogue between counselors is not something that is facilitated. So it hinders our ability to be understood. I also think there's environmental conditions. Social media is not so social sometimes. It's, I think, an obstacle to having good relationships when you have conversations that show up surprisingly on social media, or you have people that have a very strong opinion and they attack the individual instead of addressing the issue. I don't know any of the counselors that wouldn't welcome the opportunity to sit down and have a face-to-face discussion on any issue, as long as we can concentrate on the issue and agree that it's okay to disagree. We're not wrong, we're just different. We have different opinions. And it's disconcerting to me when you have social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter that are censoring the comments of some of the people and some of the news reporting that's going on. That, I mean, we have our First Amendment rights. To me, that has pushed our First Amendment over the top when they begin to censor. And censorship's wrong, whether it's for a government doing it or a private entity doing it. So thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, thank you. We do have to move on to the next section now. There are a few people unmuted. I apologize. So now we are on to local issues, and this will be a 15-minute section, roughly 5 minutes for each question. So the first question is, how will the tax increase 2A help the community if passed? Yes, Dave Clark.
I thought Don was going to jump in on that one. That's why I didn't say anything. I'll go real quick, and then I think Don will probably want to say something. You know, as I've said, and I've talked to you folks, I don't like tax. I mean, it's not that I don't like taxes. I don't like a lot of taxes, and I don't like taxes that get abused or misused. In this case, the city of Loveland over the last few years has done a lot in cutting budgets to make, or cutting expenses to make their budgets. And we're to the point now that we are simply, there's two choices. We need to get some more revenue with this tax increase, or next year we're going to have some very serious cuts to our city services. And why are those services important? Because it's what makes Loveland an attractive place. It's what gives us the quality of life that many of us have come to enjoy. And so I think it's needed. Even though I'm not the big fan of raising taxes, this is one that definitely is needed, and that we need to go about that and use that wisely in the future if it does pass.
Thank you. I saw John Fogel, your hand.
Yes, from the tax standpoint, I agree with Dave. You know, my first choice would not be to raise taxes, but quite honestly, for the last 4 to 5 years, as counselors, we have scrimped, we've cut budgets, and we've just consistently cut those budgets until there's not much of anything to cut. I mean, at some point we do have to buy a few paper clips. We don't have to buy them by the truckload, but we do have bills to pay, and the city has expenses. I think one of the things that gets lost in the functionality of city government is what the city does for us. I mean, just look around and find something that the city doesn't do for us. The city, as a function of what it does, 75% plus of what it does involves construction. Construction on road repair, construction on new roads, construction on buildings to service the people and provide facilities for safety services, for the fire department, for the police department, and so much more. The fact that it is a construction-based environment, okay, has led to increases in costs that have just gotten carried away with themselves. Anybody that's in the construction trade, and probably some of your parents that are in the construction trades, can tell you what construction equipment and construction materials have been costing over the last few years, and it's been skyrocketing. So, as Dave said, you know, we don't have any choices. Either we raise the taxes now, or we pay more later, and we'll have to raise them even higher later. So we've chosen to step in and do this small increase now, rather than just keep kicking the can down the road and let things deteriorate to the point that it becomes incredibly expensive. The other side of this tax increase is right now interest is as low as it's been in history. So if we need to borrow money to do all this stuff that we're going to do, all these repairs, there is no less expensive time to do it than right now. And by kicking this can down the road, all we're going to do is cost the citizens of Loveland millions upon millions of dollars in additional interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Sampson, was your hand up?
Yes. Hi. Every time that I start talking to you guys, my child's quiet unless I'm talking. Hold on a sec, Buck. So this is a super important tax because this is about our quality of life. And this isn't just about our quality of life as the, 9 of us are on council, right? There's 5 people that, are up for re-election next year. They may or may not really even get to have a say, depending on how their elections turn out, if they decide to run, on how this money is spent. to me, this is important. To me, this needs to be supported. You know, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this needs to be supported, but for me, this is important because it's your generation. It's my kids' generation. If this money is used properly, it goes into the sidewalks, it goes into our streets, it goes into our downtown, which is really like the heart of our city. All of the things that we love about this city that we believe it really could be, 2A can help grant that. And we see a lot of like I grew up here while I was in 5th grade, but you know, my family moved away and I really didn't have an intention of moving back. I know a lot of your friends go to school, they go to college away out of state, maybe they stay there. You know, what's bringing them back here? And my hope is that the way that 2A is spent, you know, it's been put into buckets. And so we know 50% of it's going to go into infrastructure. That's super important. Those are our roads, our street, our traffic, our sidewalks, all of the things that make a city a city. So that's super, super important that we start investing in that now. Just like Councillor Fogel was saying about the bonds, if we're going to invest, if it's cheaper to invest in it now to maintain it than it is to have to go down the road and fix it eventually when it all breaks. So to me, this is super important that this passes. I believe that it's a really big step for Loveland and towards our future and towards having a really good quality of life that brings all of you and your friends home when you go away for college. So I hope that answered the question because I forgot what the question was.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you.
Also, thank you to Angela Myers. It looks like you have to go for another speaking engagement. So thank you to her for that. We will go on to the next question. How is Loveland addressing the needs of youth mental health? All right, Steve Olson.
Thank you for that. I guess nobody else wants to tackle this one. Well, healthcare in general, and particularly mental health, is not a responsibility of the city. However, having said that, we have a Human Services Commission that has funds that are available to it. And it's some federal funds that we can allocate out to different organizations that are meeting the various needs of our community. And one of those is mental health, and particularly mental health for the youth. So there's opportunities of any nonprofit organization out there to be able to request some support and some funds to maybe fix some of their gaps that they might have in the care that they're providing. But there's the city, and I know many of the counselors are actively involved and have had experiences in the mental health area. Early on, when I got on council, I was able to get 24 organizations together to address the 3 most significant issues facing Loveland. Those were homelessness, opioids, and suicide. And so a presentation was made at council. There were some asks, and those have largely been met. So it's maybe a small contribution, but nonetheless, it is a contribution. Also, council extensively supported the behavioral health initiative for the county. And we stepped out of the way so we wouldn't have a conflict on some of the ballot measures that we had, and worked hard. And many of us worked hard to work on the passage of that initiative. I'm one of the representatives to the Behavioral Health Council, and we have been allocating millions of dollars throughout the cities in Larimer County to address the various issues of behavioral health. So we participate extensively in that, the Behavioral Health Commission, the Behavioral Health Organization, Larimer County, either as a council member or as the Technical Advisory Commission. And now we're starting up a participant, or the residents have a voice in how those funds can be used. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, was your hand up?
I'm going to hold off on answering because I'd like to answer the next question. Thank you.
Councilor Overcash.
Yeah, I too was holding for certain questions, but you mentioned we had a little extra time. So I just wanted to add something that I think is very important as it impacts each and every one of you and your classmates. Our school resource officer program that the city has been funding primarily in the past, and now the school district is funding that 50-50. That's not putting police officers in the school. That's putting resource officers. And I know from experience and working closely with them as well as students that they're involved in a lot more than making sure the right people are entering and leaving school. They're involved with students and they're listening and they're able to help direct students and get them assistance. They're building relationships. They're giving them a safe place to bring some problems to, if they feel they're being bullied or some other issues, drug issues, whatever might be in pressure. And so that's one way the city is really involved with our youth in mental health and overall public safety, a function they perform.
Thank you. All right, and we will go on to the next question. How is Loveland addressing the needs of BIPOC people, so that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color? And Andrea, did you want to answer that one?
If I could, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. So right after I was seated, like a couple weeks after that, the council supported a rule of 4 to create what we at that time called a diversity commission. Of course, we now know, thankfully, that diversity is probably not the right term. So it's something that would be looked at probably more like an equity inclusion commission. So that is something that our city is actually doing. We did have a proclamation by the mayor. I'm sure she'll probably speak to it, but she had a proclamation denouncing racism, denouncing white supremacy. We've said a lot, right? But I don't know that we've actually done enough. There is this really great program called Cahoots, where when you dial 911, this happens in Oregon, but you dial 911 and you can either get depending on the nature of your need or of your call, like EMS partnered with a mental health provider can come to your home versus a police officer, or the police officer can assist but be kind of in the background. We already do run a model very similar to that with Summit Stone, and that was one of the things I was going to touch on is really Summit Stone is one of our fantastic partners for mental health. I don't think we're doing enough for mental health as a nation. I don't think we're doing enough for mental health as a state or as a city, for teens or for adults, especially with COVID. That's really put a strain on that system. But I do believe that one of the things we can do for our BIPOC community and our marginalized communities in general is to encourage the use of, this Cahoots program, right, with our police officers. And so, that's one thing I think we can do. The other thing is ensuring that there's representation, that there's leadership, that there's opportunities for leadership. So there's a lot of things that we can be doing. I personally believe the curriculum needs to be updated in our schools as well. So there's things we can do. I don't think we're doing enough, but I do believe that we're taking steps. And I really hope that you, as youth who care about this, continue to put that pressure on us to make sure it stays at the forefront of our minds.
Thank you.
So.
And Don Overcash?
Yeah, thank you. I think this issue is deeper than a national issue. It's deeper than a state issue. It's much more than a local issue. This issue is really a very personal issue. Many times what government tries to do or society tries to do, it attempts to legislate morality. For instance, in order to control behavior. For instance, we see a street and there's a lot of speeding on the street. People are driving too fast. So we deem that that's dangerous for other people. So we pass a law and we change the speed limit and we put a sign up. And everybody can certainly read the sign. But people continue, including maybe the people that passed the law, to speed. So then you ask them, well, why are you speeding? There's a sign there. And they say something like, oh, I forgot, or I wasn't paying attention. But really, they don't care. It's not important to them. They're placing their interest above the value of others. And you say, so why don't you care? Well, they don't care because they don't value the safety of other people. They don't value others. They just want what they want for various reasons. So I really don't think that the issue is we need more laws. We need more rules. We have a discrimination policy in place. There's hate rules or hate laws that are in place. You can go to jail. You can go to the federal penitentiary. Just go out and commit a hate crime. We have laws that say you shouldn't kill people, and yet people willfully kill people. We have laws that we know from our behavior you shouldn't judge other people by the color of their skin or their sex or their age, and yet people do that. I think what we need to do is realize that this is a personal responsibility of individuals. This is a heart issue. And until the heart is changed and people value others and respect others because they're human beings, they have value, we're going to continually struggle with whether it's white racism or black racism, or it's Anglo racism, or it's European, or it's whatever country you want to pick, whatever gender or nationality you want to choose. This, folks, comes down to our individual choices. We need to become people who value others and demonstrate that behavior. Then the laws go away. The law just points out the darkness in our own hearts.
Councilman
So,
Overcash, your
thank you.
time is up.
All right.
Thanks, Eloise.
Steve Olson, your hand is up.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate that. This question, and I appreciate the question, it connotates to me that the people, Black, Indigenous, people of color, are unable to deal with life themselves. And so we have to give them a handout. We have to give them a hand up because they don't have the ability to do it on their own. And I spent 12 months in Vietnam. The last thing on my mind is what race was the person that was next to me in the foxhole. That was really irrelevant. We were brothers in arms, and still today, in the Marine Corps League, we are brothers in arms. So I find it interesting that there's a lot of whites running around crying racism and wanting to solve a problem. Well, I've turned to some of the Black community that have a more conservative view. I appreciate the writings and conversation and blogs of Larry Elder. He's an attorney. He has a radio program out in LA. And I'd like you to just read one little quote from him. He's written a book that says, "What's race got to do with it?" He says, "The incessant harping about the pervasiveness of racism is not only wrong-headed, but downright dangerous. It diminishes personal responsibility and dupes people into thinking that their salvation rests more with the government spending and expansion of government programs than dealing with things on their own. Blaming racism is not just false, it's toxic. It keeps race wary of each other. Watch what I say. Watch for the innocent remark that might be construed as racist or racially insensitive. Unfounded charges of racism cause us to emphasize differences rather than our broad and deep similarities. We are Americans, and it's unfortunate that we've divided people into groups. And we've lost that idea that we are all Americans. And to me, we're all Americans, period. And that's what we ought to focus on. If there's, if somebody voice is not being heard, then it shouldn't make any difference what color they are. Let's deal with the fact that we want to provide opportunities for everybody's voice to be heard. So my thoughts, thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, very quickly, Mayor Marsh.
Yeah, I think that there's a disconnect. I think people, people of white skin are not subjected to the daily experiences of a person of color that start very early in life. We aren't treated with suspicion. Walking down the street, if we see a white person walking towards us, we don't feel like we closer to us. And yet Black people experience that. that when they're approaching an older woman and they see her clutch her purse, or they see nervousness, they experience it, I believe, on a daily basis, and it starts when they're very young, and it's ingrained. Somebody following them in a store, because the perception is that they're more likely to steal something. Their perception that we trust whites more than a person of color. I think it is ingrained, and I think that there's a disconnect between my experience as a white person and a person of color's experience just in everyday life.
All right, thank you. And we have about 20 minutes left. So to give time for last remarks from the panelists, we are going to skip over 3.3, which is questions related to COVID, and go to questions related to climate control, because we did receive an overwhelming amount of questions about climate change from the youth. So we would like to do that. So this section is going to be 10 minutes. And we will start with, what is Loveland's climate action plan?
I guess I guess I'll weigh in here. I don't know that we have a climate action plan. You know, I think we do. We do have a handful of electric vehicles. You know, I don't think you would have a unanimous opinion on our council whether climate change is real. I happen to believe that it is. I think that, you know, we need to take some pretty big steps to deal with it, and quickly, both in cutting down emissions. You know, I believe if you look at the fires that we've had, when you heat up an area, you dry up an area, and you make it more susceptible for fires. So I look at this past summer, the 65 plus days of 90-degree temperatures are over, and the fires as unfortunately, you know, a forecast of the future if we don't start taking some pretty significant actions. So, but I know that not everybody shares that opinion.
Thank you. Steve Olson, your hand is raised.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I guess the one has to decide whether or not you accept that mankind is responsible for climate change. We, you know, for the millions of years that the earth has existed, we've had climate change. Colorado was under water at one time. It was under ice at one time. The climate has changed. It also begs that it's a worldwide problem. It's a worldwide climate. Colorado, Loveland can't do anything to affect a worldwide climate. A lot of our climate comes from actually China, comes from California. And so we, because of the natural rotation of the earth, we inherit the climate from those areas. This fire is a natural event. It has not helped the air quality, that's for sure. So I'm not of the persuasion, I think it's a little bit arrogant to say that we can solve and change climate, particularly here in Loveland, Colorado. Now, I think the city manager would be disappointed to hear that we don't have a climate program, because the city has invested in renewable energy. It participates with PRPA and renewable energy and looking at options to reduce greenhouse gases. We have taken a lot of steps throughout our departments to be conscious of our environment. We have one of the best recycling programs in the nation, and we're kind of a model for that aspect of civilization. So we are doing a lot here. I wish I could give you more specific examples, but in the conversations I've had with department heads and city manager, we are doing a lot here to help protect our environment. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Don Overcash and then Dave Clark.
Thank you. I'm going to combine the two questions because I think they do relate together. I believe that really it's all of our responsibilities to be good stewards of the gift that we've been given, which is this planet that we refer to as planet Earth. I don't think anybody disagrees that putting toxic materials into the ocean or into the air or into our water is a good thing. I think everybody would agree that that would be foolish. What's happened, unfortunately, is the issue has become very politicized, not just within Colorado or our nation, but within the world. And it's almost become as productive as arguing about religion. So instead of arguing about unsettled science and other people saying it's settled science, and we can use whatever data we want to build our case. I've always learned that data can really be misused. It's how you look at it. But let's take some common sense approaches to that. We're to protect this planet. It's the only place we have to live. But to go extreme left or right makes no sense at all. I'm really pleased with our city. It does have a plan. We're using electric vehicles. We're replacing some of our our large vehicles with trucks that are run by electricity and self-generating electricity as well, and the braking systems. We have a very aggressive environmental plan with our recycling center. That place is packed all the time. I'm in there at least once a week taking things there for my neighbors. We have an agreement with PRPA where they're basing their decisions upon 3 pillars, looking at the whole issue. They're talking about when we make decisions, got to be based upon reliability of electricity. It has to be able to be financially sound decisions. And it also has to have environmental concerns. So there's these 3 pillars, and you can't sacrifice one for the other and say that's the right thing, because the decisions we make over time have an influence, a significant influence, not just on our environment, but on our ability of our families to provide for themselves. So I like that policy that we have, and we've endorsed that. And they have some additional caveats. They made a decision today. They're moving away in the new RFP plan. They're moving away from coal, and we're already close to 85, 90% renewable. And we're going to replace the balance of what we need using natural gas, which is certainly much cleaner than coal. So if we were in Washington, we could use more hydro. If we were in Florida, we're screwed. You got nuclear. That's about the only option because it's too expensive to get coal down there, and they can't use the other sources of renewable energy. So we're really blessed to be in Colorado, where we have the ability to have the renewable energy, and we also have access to very clean natural gas. And we can replace coal with that and continue to move towards a 100% renewable plan in the future. But doing so, recognizing 3 rational, sustainable
Councilman
pillars.
Overcash, your time is over.
All right, and Dave Clark.
Shannon, a lot what I was going to say has already been said, so I'll pass. Thank you.
All right, thank you. John Fogel.
When it comes to renewable energy, I think one of the things that is worth talking about is we absolutely want to take care of our planet in the best manner that we can, but keep in mind what petroleum does for you. Just take a look, take a 360-degree look at your bedroom that you're sitting in, your dining room you're sitting in, your living room that you're sitting in. Just look around. 75% of the products, including the chairs you're sitting on, were produced with petroleum. And the rest of what you see, including the bricks, beautiful picture, Eloise, of the downtown foundry project. But we think of we think of so many things as being renewable and so many things as not having to do anything with petroleum. Every one of the bricks that's in that foundry project behind you in that beautiful picture, every one of those bricks was produced either with heat from petroleum or power that was produced by petroleum. There's just simply no other way to do it. So while climate change is absolutely the truth, man's reliance on petroleum is not going to go away. It's not going to go away anytime in this lifetime. And that's the only thing I wanted to interject is while we can do better and we continue to do better, okay, there's also a school of thought that says that natural gas is a renewable energy source because our planet produces natural gas on its own, not just from petroleum decomposition. So just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Professor Hitt.
Well, so, I so enjoy hearing this conversation from actual elected officials. It's really stimulating. I hope everyone's enjoying it as much as I am. I think as an academic, where I'd like to just come into this debate here. So the second question that we sort of shifted a bit to, into whether it's a governmental responsibility to deal with climate change, as you're seeing right now, it's a values question, right? This is why we have elections, because what the role of government should be in dealing with the wicked problems of life, whether you think they're man-caused or not, is a philosophical difference that we're seeing on display here. And that's the wonderful thing about our system of government, is that politics is our organized way of managing these kinds of values conflicts. Now, because of that, I'm no expert in this area and just simply offering some observations here. It seems likely because of this tremendous values conflict, what American society is probably going to have to look for are technological and market-based solutions that deal with making the climate healthier simply as a matter of good business and good technology. We've moved away from coal, not so much because of government policies, but because it's become less economically efficient to run a coal power plant as opposed to a gas power plant, or in some states, wind. And so it's not an all or nothing. It's not a, oh, if the government does everything from the top down, then that solves other problems and it's a silver bullet. But similarly, it's not as if there's not other forces at work here in politics and society that, you know, hopefully, I know there's a lot of young folks here. Climate change tends to be something I think young people care a lot about. So to not see it in sort of all or nothing or either or kinds of terms, right? There's lots of different fronts that this thing is being studied, considered on, and if, you know, for the folks who consider it a problem, worked on.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are at the last few minutes of the town hall, and I would like to give you all one more minute to talk to the youth about just the importance of being involved and any last words that you have to say to them. So we will go in the same order as what is stated on the agenda. So Dave Clark, you have 1 minute to speak.
Thank you, Shannon and Eloise and others who kind of put this together. I know several of the YAC members are with us, and I hope it was beneficial. Again, remember, there's always different opinions, and we live in a country that you can express those opinions without fear of what maybe other countries, other people in other countries have. So please listen, learn, and make your own opinions, and then make a difference. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor John Fogel.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the invitation to speak. And I want to thank each and every one of you and the youth people that are yet to come. The yearly trips where we take you to Washington, D.C., and we get to see the light in your eyes when you see government at work. We get to see the light in your eyes when you see what our forefathers have left for us, the magnificent Washington, D.C. skyline and everything that there is to see. It falls on you, because these trillions that we're borrowing to take care of COVID, these trillions that we're borrowing to take care of COVID on an ongoing basis, I'm not going to pay back a dime of it. This is going to be the debt that your generation inherits. So get involved, stay involved, and don't let people dissuade you from it, regardless of which side of the fence you fall on. Thank you again for the invite.
Thank you. And Professor Hitt.
Yeah, so first I want to say thanks to you, Shannon, to Eloise, and to the YAC for running an incredibly, I think, stimulating, civil, informative event for the youth community here. I was very impressed and so enjoyed listening to my fellow panelists. As a professor, one of the things I often really still, after all these years, stand in awe of, and I hope to sort of bring us back to why engagement is so important. This country was founded in part on the incredible notion that people, ordinary people, are the sovereign. We're in charge, and that we includes you, right? As citizens of this country, that responsibility of self-government is coming. It's here for those of you who are voting in this upcoming election, and that's a remarkable and wonderful thing that we have inherited a place where we have an opportunity to participate in our own government and have some say in what happens in our lives and in our societies. And don't take that for granted. You know, many people in many ways have fought and suffered and died so that we could be here right now reading through blue books and walking to ballot drop boxes. So I look forward to the day when you get to put your first one in there. It's a really magical thing.
Thank you. And Mayor Marsh, your last words.
Thank you for creating this forum and for inviting us to participate. It gives me hope to see our youth involved at an early age. You know, you will be the people that make the difference in the future, and I encourage you to raise and to be passionate about those things that you care about, to advocate both for and against.
Thank you. Councilor Andrea Sampson.
Hi, thank you. So I think I can probably echo what everyone said here tonight. But it's just so, I feel so privileged as the youngest member of council to be serving Loveland, hopefully to be representing the families that have young children, even the youth, even though I am not any good at TikTok. Actually, I'm scared of TikTok. But, you know, and I know you guys are more than just TikTok, but that part's scary. But I do want to remind everyone, you know, and ask you to remind your friends, and I know because you guys are already on a commission and very involved, that you probably do this and your friends probably get tired of hearing it from you. But, you know, it's so important that your voice is heard because we are making the decisions for your future. Just like, you know, everyone before me has said, it's so, so important that we know, you know, where you would like to see your world end up, right? What you'd like to see from your city and from your state and your country. And so I just would encourage you to volunteer even beyond the boards and commissions, which I know is a huge commitment, but also if you're not interested in, if people aren't interested in that, for even a political action committee or for a candidate or for, you know, just the things in your community that you know you can make a difference by spending your time on it. And I think that's the most important thing that you could really take home is it's not about money. You know, your campaign doesn't have to be, you know, if you ever campaign, you don't have to raise tons of money at a local campaign to win. You know, it's not about money. It's about time. It's about passion. It's about dedication.
Councilwoman
And
Sampson, your time is up. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes. Thank you, Eloise. And thank you for having me tonight, you guys.
Of course.
No surprise there.
Councilor Don Overcash.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks all of you. You put on an outstanding evening this week or tonight. If I was Bruno on Dancing with the Stars, I'd have to stand up and shout and say, magnificent. But you did. You know, we're invited to forums during election season, other times. And sometimes I can tell you that's like walking in the lion's den because, you know, you're the lion and they're hunting you. And this group was not that at all. The questions were all very good. You selected great questions. Shannon, you should apply for Chris Wallace's job. I think you could do the next debate quite well if we had that opportunity. But I wanted to leave you with just a few thoughts, if I could. Value character over promises of policy. Examine the character of the individuals that you see running for office or when you have a chance to vote. Examine the long-term character of the individual over promises, but then look at what they've done, not just what they say, but evaluate what they've done. Have they come through on their promises? Because all of a sudden then you're seeing a balance of character and policy when they fulfill promises. So watch for that. And I think one of the best things that I could provide is just some advice, if you're asking for it, is to really learn to value others over our own self-interest. If we can learn to put the value of others
Councilman
and the needs of others
Overcash,
above our
I'm
self-interest, we'll be
sorry,
successful.
but your time is up.
Thank you. And next we have Councilor Rob Malloy.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the efforts you put in to what you do, especially when you come to a council meeting. I want you to realize that when you're there, to me, your voice is very important. It brings you bring passion to what you're presenting, and that's a very important part of what politics is. Truth, which you don't always get, but we get it from our youth, that's for sure, because you're there not for alternative motives. You're there for the true representation of what you're trying to present, and I really appreciate that. Everything you bring to is pure and true to what I see, and it's important. It's an important piece when you're involved with a decision policy that we're trying to make. It's an important piece. That voice is very important to me, and I'm sure it's important to the other council members. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you. And lastly, Councilor Steve Olson.
Thank you, Shannon. Great job, you guys. I envy Dave Clark, and always have, for his opportunity he has to have frequent contact with y'all. And so it's a treasure for me when I go back to Washington and I get to have a little taste of you guys and have some stimulating conversations. So I appreciate that very much. I'm reminded of a quote by Edmund Burke that said, doesn't take anything for evil to succeed, but for good people to do nothing. And so you get the government you deserve, you get the government you work for, and you need to get involved. The Constitution begins with "we the people," and the baton is passed from generation to generation. And so we have a responsibility to pass you a nation that is well-functioning, economically viable. We've kind of fallen down a little bit in that part. All parties are responsible for that. But you need to get involved early on, and this is a great step that you've done, that you've taken. So I applaud you for that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate tonight, and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists for a great discussion tonight and for engaging with the youth through this event. And thank you to all the youth in attendance tonight for engaging in politics and with your community. We put a lot of hard work into this event, and we are so glad to see the positive impact it had. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you for coming.
Job well done.
Yay!
That was
What a
really
compliment.
fun.
Oh, Eloise, I think that was probably the hardest job to tell people your time is up.
I was so stressed. I gave people about an extra 10 seconds when they went over, and then I would cut them off. But yeah.
I think that was
I just I had to give them like a grace period.
yeah.
I know. A compliment for Shannon to be the next moderator of the presidential debate. Yay.
Amazing.
Oh my God. It was
I
phenomenal.
think this needs to be an annual thing. I think that was really awesome.